Lifeboats. Art in a time of science and religion. The great Sufi poet Hafiz wrote, "The great religions are the ships, poets, the lifeboats. Every sane person I know has jumped overboard." Shams-ud-Din Muhammad Hafiz was a Sufi master who lived in Persia, also known as Iran, in the 14th century, after the conclusion of the Crusades, but before the surgence of the Ottoman Empire. In the 1800s, Ralph Waldo Emerson encountered a German translation of some of Hafiz's poetry and was moved to translate several of the poems from the German into English. Emerson remarked of Hafiz, "He fears nothing. He sees too far. He sees throughout. Such is the only man I wish to be." Why do I characterize ours as a time of science and religion? Both science and the great religions appear to me to be rather rigid and unbending depictions of the world. And both of them seem focused on what is outside of us. Science requires rigorous objectivity. Religion, most Western religions anyway, is about a God out there and our obedience to rules and judgments imposed from outside ourselves. Science requires impassive and steadfast observation, careful labeling, critical analysis, impartial distancing from the object of our study. Inquisitiveness, yes, but always tempered by persistent and pervasive skepticism. As for religion, as an anthropologist, I would say that the nature of religion is also to explain to us human beings the workings of the world. But unlike science, it also explains humanity's place in the universe and the right way of interacting with it and with one another. Religion exists to explain why things are the way they are. It's not the business of science to explain why something is the way it is or happens the way it does. Science only supplies the what and the how. Why is generally a religious question. So what about art? British anthropologist Alfred Gell wrote a really tediously dull book that I absolutely love called Art and Agency. And in this book, he strives to produce an understanding of art that will apply equally to the contents of any museum of modern art or symphony hall, as well as to the works of Australian Aboriginals, Eskimos, or Tibetan yak herders. Gell says, "I view art as a system of action intended to change the world rather than encode symbolic propositions about it." Anthropologists have studied such systems of action in many parts of the world. Steve Lansing made an extensive study of art among the peoples of the Indonesian island of Bali. The Balinese are one of the most prolifically artistic peoples known to anthropology. They produce sculpture, paintings, flower arrangements, drama, music, shadow puppet performances, poetry. Their lives are permeated at every turn with art. Every Balinese is an artist of one sort or another. And yet, the Balinese have no word for what we call art. There are, however, two words that they use when talking about art: alongo and taksu. Alongo, they say, is present in sounds and letters, but also in the beauty of the mountains and the sea. Alongo is a dimension of reality that only becomes available to us through active use of the poetic imagination. It is described as both the ultimate foundation of all that exists and its real essence, a beauty that is imperceptible to the ordinary senses because it is of a finer texture than the perceptible world, yet pervades everything. As for Taksu, great performances and great performers are said to have Taksu. Actors, singers, musicians are encouraged to lose themselves in their performances by giving themselves up to their Taksu. I think Federico Garcia Lorca would call this duende. Archaeologist Stephen Mythen argues that art is a defining characteristic of a watershed period in human evolution when human consciousness at last transcended the workaday categories of tools and resources and daily life, bringing what he terms a cognitive fluidity to bear on the whole of the life experience. He says we became fully human. We become fully human only with the experiencing of cognitive fluidity, which leaves us in awe and leads us into those acts of creativity, those sparks of creativity that we call art. Daniel Ladinsky, in his commentary on the works of Hafiz, notes, true art evolves us, opens our arms, and weakens our prejudices so that the ever-present seeds of healing and renewal can take root in our soul and sinew and cause joy. A Mesoamerican poet expressed a similar view. The true artist, capable, practicing, skillful, maintains dialogue with his heart, meets things with his mind. The true artist draws out all from his heart. Art engages our experience. It calls us to participate in its vision of what is or what might be. Even when art is shocking, it is usually only offending our habitual views and categories, and thus prodding us toward increased wakefulness. I began my own journey through this life in the realm of religion under the loving tutelage of my father, a Methodist minister. As I grew up, however, I found this vision too narrow, and suspecting there might be more to life than this, I took refuge in the world of science. In the realm of science, my doubts were no longer a sign of weakness, but rather a hallmark of my commitment to question, to investigate, to demand evidence, and not be deluded by pretty stories. Then in my late 30s, I began to find science too narrow as well. I'd become convinced that the most important truths about humankind, about life and the universe and experience, could no more be expressed in scientific terms, objectively, statistically, than they could in houses of worship. I've occasionally sought to explore the changing landscapes of my journey through poetry. Poetry has, at times, been my own personal lifeboat. Here's one example, written in 2004. The light of scientific knowledge shines brightly, illuminating the intricate details of this marvelous world. I stand in awe of the vastness and complexity this light reveals, but I know it is like a miner's lamp, illuminating the area right in front of our faces. Shift slightly to right or left, and darkness follows our inattentiveness, filling the void where the light is not. Straight ahead seems the only way to go. I think it is possible to see more. In this very moment, turn off the light of scientific scrutiny. Let the contours of the landscape emerge from the dimness, the whole, in front, behind, above, below, can never be revealed by science alone. It is the one, and in its pervasive presence, we are moved not to science, but to art and poetry. Everything we need to know was already known 10,000 years ago. So I'm going to end by returning to Hafiz. This time I'm going to include the final 3 lines of his poem. The whole thing goes like this. The great religions are the ships, poets, the lifeboats. Every sane person I know has jumped overboard. That's good for business, isn't it, Hafiz? Another form of survival.
Now, for those of you who know that Donna used to be an anthropologist,